The man stuffing baby formula into his jacket had no idea he was being watched. He had no idea the woman behind the counter had made the same desperate choice 3 years ago. And he had no idea that in 60 seconds, his entire world would shatter, and then rebuild. The rain hammered against the windows of Miller's grocery, like 1,000 tiny fists demanding to be let in. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in Portland, Oregon, and the store was nearly empty. Just the hum of refrigerators, the flicker of old fluorescent lights, and the quiet desperation of people who shop late at night because they have nowhere else to be. Sarah Mitchell stood behind the checkout counter, her name tag slightly crooked, her eyes tired but alert. She had worked at Miller's for 4 years now, ever since everything fell apart. Ever since the night that changed her forever. At 32, she looked older. Grief has a way of aging you that time alone cannot. If this story makes you believe in second chances, in the power of seeing people instead of judging them, then please like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Because what you're about to witness proves that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is remember our own pain and use it to heal someone else's. Sarah was restocking cigarettes behind the counter when she noticed him. A young man, maybe 25, wearing a faded gray hoodie that had seen better days. His jeans were torn, not fashionably, but from wear. His sneakers were held together with duct tape. But it wasn't his clothes that caught Sarah's attention. It was his eyes. She had seen those eyes before. In her own mirror. Eyes that carried the weight of impossible choices. Eyes that had stopped sleeping. Eyes that were drowning. The young man, his name was Daniel Cooper, though Sarah didn't know that yet, moved slowly through the aisles, pretending to browse. His hands shook slightly as he reached for a can of beans, then put it back. He picked up a loaf of bread, checked the price, and set it down again with the careful disappointment of someone doing math in their head that never adds up to enough. Then he turned down aisle 7. The baby aisle. Sarah's heart tightened. She knew that aisle too well. Knew every product on every shelf. Knew which formula was the most expensive and which one desperate parents settled for. Knew the weight of each canister because she had held them all, comparing, calculating, hoping. Daniel stood in front of the formula section for a long moment, just staring. His shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths, like a man preparing to jump off a cliff. Then, with a quick glance over his shoulder, he grabbed 2 canisters of Enfamil, the good kind, the kind that costs $43 each, and shoved them inside his jacket. Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward the silent alarm button beneath the counter. Store policy was clear. Theft is theft. Press the button. Let security handle it. Protect the inventory. But her finger froze just above the red button. Because Daniel wasn't running. He wasn't moving toward the door. Instead, he stood there in the aisle, his hand pressed against his jacket where the formula created a bulky, obvious shape. And then Sarah saw something that made her decision. He was crying. Silently, desperately, crying. His other hand covered his mouth, as if trying to hold back a sob that was too big to contain. Sarah stepped out from behind the counter. Her co-worker, Marcus, was in the back room doing inventory. It was just her and this young man, and a choice that would define them both. She walked slowly down aisle 7, her footsteps echoing on the linoleum floor. Daniel heard her coming and turned, his face collapsing into a mask of shame and fear. "Please," he whispered, and it was barely a word, more like a prayer. "Please, I'll put it back. I'm sorry. My daughter, she's—" His voice broke completely. Sarah stood 3 feet away from him, close enough to see the dark circles under his eyes, close enough to see that his hands weren't just shaking from fear but from exhaustion, close enough to see that this wasn't a man who stole because he wanted to but because he had run out of every other option. "How old is she?" Sarah asked quietly. Daniel blinked, confused by the question. "What? Your daughter? How old is she?" "3 months," he said, his voice cracking. 3 months old. Her name is Emma. She's so small, and she's hungry, and I lost my job 2 weeks ago, and my wife, He stopped, unable to continue, his whole body trembling with the effort of holding himself together. Sarah felt something inside her chest crack open, something she had kept locked and buried for 3 years. "Take the formula out of your jacket," she said gently. Daniel's face went pale. "Please don't call the cops. Please. If I get arrested, there's no one to take care of Emma. My wife is in the hospital. She had complications after the birth and she's still recovering and—" "I'm not calling anyone," Sarah interrupted. "Take the formula out and come with me to the register." Daniel hesitated, then slowly removed the 2 canisters from his jacket and held them like they were made of glass, like they were the most precious things in the world. Because to him, they were. Sarah walked back to the counter, and Daniel followed, each step heavy with dread. Behind the register, Sarah scanned both canisters. The total flashed on the screen, $86.74. Daniel stared at the number like it was a prison sentence. "I don't have it," he whispered. "I don't have anything." Sarah reached into her purse beneath the counter and pulled out her wallet. She had $212 inside. It was supposed to last her until next Friday. It was for rent, for utilities, for the bare minimum of survival. But she had been where Daniel was standing. She had stood in a different store, in a different city, holding formula she couldn't afford, making calculations that had no good answer. She pulled out $90 and slid it into the register. The drawer opened with a mechanical ding. She put the formula into a plastic bag and held it out to Daniel, whose face had gone completely blank with shock. "Take it," Sarah said. "I can't. I don't understand." "Take it," she repeated, more firmly. "Your daughter is hungry. That's all that matters right now." Daniel reached out with shaking hands and took the bag. He stared at it, then at Sarah, then back at the bag. And then he did something that broke Sarah's heart completely and put it back together at the same time. He collapsed. Not physically, but emotionally. He set the bag on the counter and covered his face with both hands, and the sobs that came out of him were the kind that come from a soul that has been holding on too tightly for too long. "I'm sorry," he kept saying through his tears. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I tried everything. I applied for assistance, but they said it would take weeks to process. I asked family, but they don't have anything either. I sold everything I could sell. I couldn't let her go hungry. I couldn't." Sarah came around the counter and did something she hadn't done since the night she lost everything. She reached out and hugged a stranger. She held Daniel while he cried, this young father who had run out of options and dignity and hope, and she whispered, I know. It's okay. You're going to be okay." Before we continue, take a moment and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Sarah's position? Would you have pressed that alarm, or would you have seen the person behind the desperation? Your answer matters, because how we treat people in their darkest moments defines who we really are. When Daniel finally collected himself, Sarah stepped back and looked at him seriously. "How much do you need?" she asked. "What? How much do you need to get through the next 2 weeks until your assistance kicks in?" Daniel shook his head. "I can't ask you for. You're not asking. I'm offering." "How much?" He did the math in his head, the same terrible math he had been doing for weeks. "Maybe $300. 4 food, 4 diapers, 4, he stopped, realizing how impossible that number sounded. Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about her own rent, her own bills, her own careful budget. Then she thought about Emma, 3 months old, hungry, depending on a father who was trying so hard that he was willing to steal for her. "I don't have that much right now," Sarah said honestly. "But I have an idea." She pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app. "Give me your name and phone number. I'm going to call some local churches tomorrow. There are emergency funds for situations exactly like yours. I'm also going to talk to my manager about whether we have any open positions, even part-time." And in the meantime, she reached under the counter and pulled out a business card for a local food bank. "Go here tomorrow morning. They open at 8. Tell them Sarah from Miller's sent you. They'll help." Daniel took the card with trembling hands, staring at it like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't even know me." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in 3 years, she allowed herself to speak the truth she had been carrying. 3 years ago," she said slowly, "I had a baby girl. Her name was Lily. She was 6 months old when she got sick. Meningitis. It happened so fast. One day she was fine, and the next day she was in the ICU." Daniel's face softened with understanding and grief. Sarah continued, her voice shaking but determined. "I had insurance, but it didn't cover everything. The bills piled up so high I couldn't breathe. I worked 3 jobs trying to keep up, but it wasn't enough. And one night, I stood in a store just like this one, holding formula, trying to decide whether to buy it or steal it, because I had $10 to my name and a baby who needed to eat." "What did you do?" Daniel asked quietly. "I stole it," Sarah said, and the confession felt like releasing a weight she had carried for years. "I walked out of that store with formula under my coat, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. But I fed my daughter. And 2 weeks later, she died anyway. The infection was too strong. Nothing I did mattered." The silence that followed was heavy with shared grief. "I'm so sorry," Daniel whispered. "I think about her every single day," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. "I think about what I would have done, who I would have become, if someone had helped me instead of judging me. And when I saw you tonight, I saw myself. I saw a parent who would do anything for their child. And I decided that maybe I couldn't save Lily, but I could help Emma. Through you." Daniel's tears started fresh, but this time they were different. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of being seen and valued when he expected only condemnation. "Thank you," he said, and those 2 words carried the weight of everything he couldn't express. Sarah wrote her phone number on the back of a receipt. "Call me tomorrow after you visit the food bank. We'll figure out the rest together. You're not alone anymore, Daniel." He looked at the receipt, at the formula, at Sarah's kind, tired face. "How did you know my name?" She smiled slightly. "I didn't. But you look like a Daniel. Was I right?" He laughed, a broken, beautiful sound. "Yeah. Daniel Cooper." "Well, Daniel Cooper, take that formula home to Emma. And tomorrow, we start building a plan." Daniel left Miller's grocery that night with more than baby formula. He left with hope. With proof that kindness still existed in a world that often felt like it had run out. With the knowledge that his darkest moment had been met not with judgment but with grace. True to her word, Sarah spent the next day making calls. She contacted 3 churches, 2 community organizations, and a local charity that specialized in helping young families. By the end of the week, Daniel had received a 2-month emergency assistance package, including food vouchers, diapers, and a connection to a job placement program. Sarah's manager, moved by the story, offered Daniel a part-time position as a stock clerk. It wasn't much, but it was a start. 6 months later, Daniel's wife, Rebecca, recovered fully from her post-birth complications. They found a small but affordable apartment. Daniel's part-time job became full-time. Emma grew healthy and strong, her laugh filling rooms that had once echoed with desperation. And every 2 weeks without fail, Daniel visited Sarah at Miller's grocery, not to shop, but to say thank you. To remind himself where he had been and how far he had come. One evening, Daniel brought Emma into the store. She was 9 months old now, chubby-cheeked and bright-eyed, reaching for everything with curious hands. Sarah held her carefully, and for just a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what Lily would have looked like at that age. The pain was still there, sharp and permanent, but somehow holding Emma made it bearable. "She's beautiful," Sarah whispered. "She's alive because of you," Daniel said. "Not just because of the formula that night, but because you gave me hope when I had none left. You taught me that people can be good, even when the world feels cruel. I won't forget that. Ever." As Daniel left with Emma, Sarah returned to her register, her heart both broken and healing. She thought about Lily, about loss, about the unbearable weight of loving someone you can't save. But she also thought about Emma, about Daniel, about the ripple effect of choosing compassion over judgment. She realized that maybe Lily's legacy wasn't her death, but what Sarah chose to do with the grief. Maybe saving someone else's child was how she honored the one she couldn't save. The story of what happened that rainy Tuesday night spread quietly through the community. Not through news headlines or viral videos, but through whispered conversations and grateful hearts. The local church that helped Daniel started a dedicated fund for families in crisis. Miller's Grocery implemented a new policy allowing employees to help customers in need without fear of punishment. And Sarah, the woman who had lost everything, discovered that she still had something left to give. Years later, when Emma was old enough to understand, Daniel told her the story of the night her father almost gave up and a woman he didn't know chose to save them both. He told her that heroes don't always wear capes or badges. Sometimes they wear name tags and tired smiles. Sometimes they work the late shift at a grocery store, carrying their own pain, and still choose to ease someone else's. And Emma learned that kindness isn't just an action. It's a choice we make when we remember that every person we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. That judgment is easy, but grace requires courage. That sometimes the smallest gesture, paying for baby formula, offering a phone number, saying, "You're not alone," can change the trajectory of an entire life. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that one act of compassion can ripple outward in ways we can never fully measure, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments about a time someone showed you kindness when you needed it most. Let's build a community that chooses to see people, not problems. That chooses hope over judgment. That chooses to remember that we're all just trying to survive, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give is the reminder that we don't have to do it alone. Because on that rainy Tuesday night in Portland, Oregon, Sarah Mitchell didn't just save a baby from going hungry. She saved a father from losing himself. She saved a family from falling apart. And in the process, she saved herself from the belief that her pain had no purpose. Sometimes the most beautiful thing we can do with our brokenness is use it as a bridge to reach someone else who's drowning. And sometimes that's exactly what redemption looks like.